Today on the Relationship Revival Show, we're joined with Pallas Athena. Pallas is a life coach specializing in divorce. She helps men and women navigate the difficult time of divorcing by helping them learn to calmly co-parent, establish new boundaries, engage in healthy coping mechanisms, learn new life skills, and figure out what their new life path should be. She provides strategies and support using the 3 pillars of mind, body, spirit practices to help you move through the emotional trauma of your divorce in a faster and easier way so you can become the best version of yourself. You're listening to the Relationship Revival Podcast with John DeBach, also known as Mr. Spirituality. That's me. I'm your host, giving you insights and guidance from over 10 years in the field of this amazing journey we call romance. On this show, I go over everything you need to know about how to get into a relationship, how to get the most out of a relationship, and sometimes even how to gracefully end a relationship without pulling your hair out and going crazy. And occasionally, I'm even joined by new and old friends who are also relationship experts to bring you guidance and wisdom with new perspectives. Thanks for stopping by. Talking with Pallas Athena Morrissey today, life coach specializing in divorces and all stages of life. I'm really excited to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, John.
So let's jump into your own personal story. I think, nobody when they're a little kid says, I want to be a life coach. It's kind of a path you kind of find along the way. What brought you to being this and kind of doing this and working with people this way?
So it was a couple different things. The first was, I spent over 20 years in corporate America, right? And you get to a point where I think everybody gets to a point where they go, I feel really unsatisfied. For me, I kind of felt like I was working for the devil. I was working in the mortgage industry, and the longer you're in that, the worse it seems. So I knew that I needed something else to do and something that filled my soul, and my cup better. So I knew at that point I needed to start taking steps to make that leap. So that's what I did. And at the time I was getting really interested in, hypnosis and hypnosis stories. And I said, I kind of want to do that. And so I started going down the road of being a hypnotist and a hypnotherapist. And as part of that, you always have a consult, right? Because you've got to figure out root cause of what's really happening.
Sure.
Right? And all of us have a trauma response. And there's actually 4 different trauma responses, in case you didn't know. Do you want me to go over them real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so you've got your fight or flight. Most people always know about the fight or flight. But you also have a freeze and you have a fawn. And each one of those manifests differently, but they form in your subconscious by the time you're 7. So how you approach the world to things that, scare you, basically, right, is under one of those responses. And all of those responses then navigate within yourself through all of your different relationships over time. Okay, so they're very important to even, when you get married and how you're going to navigate, with your spouse and how your spouse reacts to you, for example, right? And so for me, it was all about, finding root causes, trying to then, fix those root causes so that you can, react and respond differently, to situations that previously would trigger you. But I found that my consult is what was the really, really, really strong stuff. And I also found that I was enjoying that part a lot more. So that's when I kind of made the switch to life coaching. And then within the life coaching realm, I was like, no, I definitely do not want to do career stuff for people. I don't want to do the business stuff, even though I'm very capable. It was not filling my cup. And
what's so interesting is, the consult part without the hypnotherapy. So you kind of found a way to get these transformations in people without using the hypnosis, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk more about that.
So honestly, I really believe that a lot of people are always looking for the answer to a why. Right? Why does this happen? Why do I react this way? Why do they do something? And when you get to a point where you understand the why, then you can actually start to figure out, what do I need to do? Right? And that's hugely important because, for example, when you have a parent growing up and you ask them a question and they just say no, and you say why, and they say because I said so, it's a
Mm-hmm.
very unsatisfying response. And even as an adult, if somebody were to say that to you, again, that's a very unsatisfying response,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even if somebody says, I don't know, well, that's not accurate either. There's a reason. Maybe you didn't feel comfortable sharing it, or maybe you know, but it's not consciously right there in the forefront of your brain, but you need to figure that out, right? And I've definitely found that, helping people kind of figure out where the root cause of things started helps them to understand as they go through life. Oh, that's why this happened. That's why I keep attracting these kind of people. That's why I keep lashing out every time, this specific situation pops up. And that why is hugely important to finding peace within yourself.
Got it. So you do kind of the work of the hypnosis sessions that you started with, but on a cognitive level
Yeah.
where you could just kind of, you don't need the relaxation state. You can kind of just look at it from an analytical standpoint and then make a plan to kind of fix whatever that problem is, right?
Right. Right.
Interesting. So what you said you don't like to talk about or work with people on a career specific, obviously, because we're here in the relationship, space.
Yeah.
How did you kind of stumble into one of your specialties as being, divorce and helping people through that process?
Yeah. So I actually took a coaching course myself because I definitely felt that, I don't know everything and I definitely want to learn from other people and grow. And there were some functions within the business for me that I needed to learn. And that was really relevant to the coaching course for me because I had been in a B2B model, in my career. And
Yeah.
now I'm operating in a B2C model, and that's different, right?
Yeah, sure.
So I had to learn that. But within that course, um, they were like, you need to be in 3 profitable niches. And I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know about this. The 3 niches were health, wealth, and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I wasn't in the wealth, which was career. And the health was definitely not my realm because, I'm not into gut mind health or fitness or nutrition. I teach as part of my foundation stuff. I teach, body, mind, spirit stuff. And so there's some basic body stuff that I do that is around your health, but I don't have, a whole plan for it. It's just like one leg, of the chair.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I definitely knew I wasn't in those spaces. And so then I realized, well, I'm in relationships. But I started realizing after a while that that's not really my forte as far as helping people stay in their relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Mine's actually helping them get out of it because that's what's awesome about me. I did get out of a relationship, actually, 2 bad relationships, and I've had to be on my own financially. I've had to co-parent. I've had to learn, right, how to amicably co-parent, even in some difficult situations. And I've also had to learn how to heal from that. And a lot of times, I like to ask this question actually of my clients, or it's actually an exercise that I have them do. And I have them go ask all the people in their inner circle, okay, for them to tell them how they would describe themselves to somebody else and what is one thing that is impressive about them.
Okay.
And the feedback you get is often a lot different than what you think it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up finding that there's things that are very impressive about you that maybe you didn't give yourself credit for, and, for me, one of the things that a lot of my friends have said was, I don't know how you do it on your own. I don't know that I could do that, and I had to really sit with that for a minute. And, whether it's in the social media stuff that I'm looking at and people in their relationships, but I realized that's something people are very afraid of is when they've been part of a unit to then separate and have to be on their own. And what does that look like? And then there were other things that I realized I just have done automatically. I don't even think about it. And yet other people, it's very scary. For example, you could have somebody who in a relationship, one person handled all the finances, right?
Yeah.
And if you've been married for 20 years, you haven't really been the one involved in it. And now all of a sudden you have to be on your own. There are basic things like, I mean, I've had to tell a client, you need to go open a bank account.
Mm-hmm.
It seems simple. It seems like something that, for me is just intuitive, go open a bank account.
Right.
But to some people, it's, oh, okay, well, how do I do that? And then I have to, tell them, go to your bank, go talk to a teller. They'll sit you down somewhere, and then make sure you also go to, HR for your company and swap out your direct deposit info.
Right.
But some of those basics, because they were separated as far as division of labor within the relationship, are
Mm-hmm.
now a very scary, oh my gosh, it's all on me. What do I do? And it feels overwhelming. So being able to give people kind of the next steps is really important. And the other thing is, I can definitely tell you, out of all the people that have died in my life, and I've had a lot of people die in my life, there's never been a situation with death of somebody that has been more horrific than the pain of my divorce and what I went through and how long I went through it. And when I say that, I'm also going to tell you, I was the one that actually wanted the divorce, and I still felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like, I wanted the divorce and I'm like, yay. Like I was,
Right.
I was mad for a while. I was upset at a lot of different things. And, the key is with divorce, you go through all the stages of grief,
Sure.
but you also go through an identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have to fight against that primal urge. If you have minor children, the idea that you are now going to be separated from those children for a period of time. And that's hard. That's really, really hard. Um, so, I definitely felt like I had come out on the other side of this,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been able to heal, and I've been able to, navigate life on my own. And a lot of people, they go through divorce and it wrecks them. And when you look into it and you realize that the average time of a divorce trauma, the average, is anywhere from 6 months on the low side, okay, to up to 2 years. That's a long time,
Mm-hmm.
to feel that kind of pain. And then you also see people who they struggle with it so much that a lot of bad things kind of start to happen in their realm, whether it's their health starts to suffer, they start drinking a lot, they've got a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms, maybe they're overeating. And so you kind of see this distinguishing between the people that do healthy coping mechanisms to try to get through that anger and anxiety and frustration and the guilt and all of that versus the people that go to unhealthy coping mechanisms. So specifically for me, I help people in that, okay, you're getting divorced, the sky has fallen, and you're in that, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Space, right? And I help them work through that. And everybody's different. Some people, maybe it's, I really just need help with co-parenting. Okay, then let's focus on that. Some people, it's like, I just don't know what to do with the rest of my life. Okay, well, let's figure that out. And let's, start mapping out a plan so you can take those steps, to figure out what your new life path is. So everybody's a little different in there, but in that space of, oh my gosh, the world just ended for me, that's where I like to step in and be a
Mm-hmm.
positive influence in somebody's painful journey.
So you kind of meet them where they are, whether it's needing a little bit of emotional support or some foresight into what this looks like through the grieving process, sometimes even just basic life skills that their partner kind of took care of and they just feel a bit lost, or co-parenting, and you just kind of help them through that process.
Yeah.
That's your role as the divorce coach.
Yeah.
So interesting. You mentioned before we spoke that there's a spiritual component to your work, or that you incorporate in your sessions. Talk to me about that. What's that all about?
Yeah. So I tried to bury it a little bit further down in the sessions, so I don't hit anybody out of the gate. But I know that in my own life, there was a certain spiritual path that definitely helped me come to acceptance of a lot of the bad in the past,
Mm-hmm.
right? And definitely helped me to see the positives in life. And when, this is really important for the people who the divorce was forced on them, right? This was not what they wanted. This was not their choice, right? And they're in a situation where they feel helpless and powerless and going, I don't understand. I don't know what to do. And I feel like a failure,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I like to try to use my spiritual discussion to change the idea of feeling like you failed to instead seeing what the wins were that you had in that relationship. How did you grow as a person? How did you help maybe the other person grow? Or, it could be something like maybe you are maybe you guys weren't great partners, but maybe you're great parents, right? And maybe that purpose is all about ushering that soul right into this world, and making sure it has love and it's safety, and you're ushering it into an adult as a functioning human.
Mm-hmm.
And so my spiritual teachings really revolve around the idea that we all have soul contracts with people. And those soul contracts are different, from person to person. And the contracts are, some are short in a length of time and some are longer in a length of time. And obviously, I'm talking about, a little bit of reincarnation here, because the idea that, we meet different people and we meet some people over and over as we go through lives. But, there's an element of this is kind of how you can come to acceptance instead of being like, you only live one life and this is the only, go through you get, and oh, it was terrible. Instead of being like, well, I can actually give you functional examples of that pertain to their life, where they can start to see that, ooh, maybe we aren't doing this whole only one life thing. And maybe there is a deeper meaning in the relationships that we have, whether it felt good or bad or not, and what we learn from them. And in a way that helps you get to the acceptance and really let go of your anger and your sadness. And I think that's really important. So,
So the role, if I'm kind of wearing more of the counselor hat, um, and I have a spirit. I mean, obviously, my nickname was Mr. Spirituality. I
right.
obviously have a spiritual angle, but if I'm putting on the hat of the atheist or someone who's an agnostic or
Yeah.
whatever, the role of spirituality in your process on a non-spiritual level is when you can assign purpose to your struggles, whether it be in divorce or something that empowers you to kind of accept it and move forward with a lot more kind of enthusiasm, because it doesn't feel like a waste or a failure or something that was a mistake. It had, you kind of grow in faith that there was a meaning and a purpose to it. I guess another way you can even, I love that you have this kind of phrase of the soul contract, but another way to kind of say it is that there was a purpose that you had that relationship. There was a reason it was destined to be 2 years long or 20 years long, and that's not because you screwed up. That's because that's how long it was supposed to be for you to accomplish such and such goals. Does
I
that
think
sound
that's
accurate?
I think that's an excellent synopsis.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's more fun to talk about it with colorful language for sure, and think about, well, what was I in a, previous life? Absolutely. And it's
Right.
like your mind gets to kind of run through the forest of exploration that way.
Yeah.
But it's and I'd say about 20% of my clients are kind of have a knee jerk reaction, even just to my like nickname. And I always tell them like, look, there's a reason that AA and Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, they cling to the idea of something bigger than yourself in their program, and that's like a crux of their success. Because when we screw up, when we think we screw up, if we have the limiting idea that it's just us alone in the world, that's really hard to take. But if there's a bigger purpose out there, whether you want to call it God or something else, if there's a bigger plan, it makes it a lot more palatable. Um, at least for me, because there are days where I'm like, what the heck does this all mean? And I'm like, well, it's not for me to know. I'm just a cog in the wheel.
Right.
Absolutely. So I guess, is that one of the things that makes you unique, is kind of this spiritual perspective that you have through it? What else is kind of like unique to you in the way you approach? Because I know I mean, divorce coaching and life coaching is obviously an explosive field right now. And everybody has their own little spin and experiences. What makes you you? You know, if you, other than what the other people told you, where you know, got that little nugget that you can do it on your own. You know, what should people know about you?
Well, I can actually get to the root of things pretty quickly. I've had several people tell me after a session that, wow, so I just learned some stuff from you about me that totally makes sense that my years of being with a therapist never uncovered.
Right.
And that's in a single session. I have some extra abilities, um, and those extra abilities allow me to tap in and also kind of hone and pinpoint certain things. My hypnosis consults, for example, that was one of the goals, was always to get rid of some of the details and the fluff. We don't care about that. We're looking for very specific things, and to really dive down into them and then see those reactions and see what kind of comes from there. So for me, it's that I can actually get to the root cause of stuff pretty quick, and I can also help people learn to see things from a different perspective, even if it's just word choice. Even if it's just, okay, you said these words, how about try using these words instead and see if you get a different reaction?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think it's that I can really get to a lot of the root problems fast, and I can also help them come to a different conclusion pretty quickly, and that the way I teach is extremely relatable. Like even the spiritual stuff, for example, I
Mm-hmm.
don't just start popping off, well, you have a soul contract, and well, this is what I mean.
Sure.
Like, I literally started off, especially if I were to have an atheist, which I haven't had one yet, but I absolutely would love to have one.
Mm-hmm.
Probably would derail the whole session, but I actually start off with factual information, and factual information such as there were psychologists, Ian Stevenson and Jim Tucker, who were psychologists at University of Virginia, who did a 40-year study on reincarnation, and they proved it. So let's just start with science and proving, right? So I kind of like started off that way to where they go, oh, and then I start putting in realistic situations that I know everybody has had that makes people go, okay, she's on to something here.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the idea of if you've ever met somebody before, right? And you're meeting them for the first time, but you're talking to them and you're like, wow, I feel like I've met this person before. I feel like I know this person. There's just something about this person. I can't put my finger on it, right? And next thing you see, the person across from you is like nodding their head, yeah, I've got a couple of those people in my
Mm-hmm.
life. And then I explain from an energy perspective what's happening, and then I link that into, the reincarnation of the souls, which is why your energy signature, your soul, your consciousness, your spirit, your aura, whatever word you want to use, okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? It identifies the energy signature of that other person. And as a result of identifying it, the problem that happens is the human conscious mind, we primarily use our eyes and our sight to justify the overwhelming majority of our existence. So what happens is our consciousness recognizes it, our eyes don't, because the avatar is different, right? So, when I start talking about in terms like that, people are then able to go, "Oh, okay, hold on. I need to really think about this a little more. Maybe there's something to it." So, I kind of take that approach so it doesn't sound just woo-woo,
Uh-huh.
to people. And that really seems to give people a lot of ease.
That's great. To make, kind of bring it to a level where they're not intimidated by it, where they're not, off put by it. I like that. I like that approach.
Yeah.
Um, what is something that when you're dealing with someone who's just at the onset of their divorce or separation, what's one piece of advice you think is kind of universal for everybody that you wish they would actually adhere to?
I would probably say, and I usually start off by saying, you're not going to like what I'm about to say. Okay. But you need to now look at this as a business transaction that's gone south. When you got married, you said, I do, with the cake and the party and the woo, 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 and love and yay. At this point, you're still wrapped up in the emotion part of it. But the reality was when you got married, that was a legal contract.
Mm-hmm.
It was a business arrangement. Now, nobody likes to think of the relationship that way.
Yeah.
But when you're coming out on the other side of this, the two things that you argue about is assets, right? And children. So money and children, right? So when you look at it, you need to kind of start to try to separate the business functions, right? That you have to unwind and untangle and, look at it as it's a business transaction. We need to undo this business transaction. And if there's children involved, we need to create a new business transaction. And even, for example, child swaps. That's another one. If you find that your child swaps are contentious, again, you come to it as, in this moment, it's a transaction. I've got cargo. I'm giving you the cargo. I'm letting you know any special considerations about the cargo. Have a nice day.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of helps separate out the nastiness that can happen. Mm-hmm. Is it unfeeling? Of course it is, but you're already feeling so many other things, right?
Sure.
The idea is to kind of start you separating some of that emotion so that you deal with your emotions in your own silo.
Right. So once you make the decision that this is not going to work, there's no use in trying to save it for whatever reason. Then to take some of the emotion out of it is a very healthy step. And I would agree with you there. I think, it allows people to move on and find other relationships and do things. And look, as soon as the kids are in the car and your ex is fading away in your rearview mirror, you could be as emotional as you want.
Right.
You have your kids again. So you could be the proud mom or dad that wants to go there. What's the ideal client like for you? Who do you love working with?
I love working with people who take the advice I give and actually do any of the activities that I tell them to do. And the ones that are very open-minded. Okay, she's telling me to do this. I don't feel like doing it, but man, I know I'm going to be on that call with her next week, so I better do it. And then in the next call, we join up and it's like, okay, I did it. And I'm like, yeah, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, yay, we got wins, right? And so it's a way that I love when the clients kind of embrace it, even if at first they don't feel like they want to, but they do. And they do the work and they keep going at it because they know they want to be on the other side of it. And they know I've been on the other side of it. So they know that they can get to that place.
Yeah.
Right. I'm the living example of I have been there and I've gotten on the other side of it. And, I'm a healthy, adjusted person and I want to make you a healthy, adjusted person. And so for me, that is the ideal client, the ones that, show up, they take the advice, they take the steps, they do the activities that we talk about and agree to. And, then you get to see the positivity week by week as you go and you get to see literally on camera, right? Their whole energy just changes, week to week. And then also I get to see their energy shift from the very beginning of the session to the end of the session, and they're just lighter. You just can feel that some of that pain that they were holding on to has just kind of started to drop away a little bit, and that's what I love the best.
Yeah. That's a really exciting feeling to see for sure.
Yeah. Because if you have somebody that's like, I'm here, but I'm not doing the work. Okay, well, do you want to feel, how long do you want to feel this way?
Right.
That's my big thing, is how long do you want to feel the way you currently feel? Because if you want to keep feeling this way, you don't need me. But if you don't want to feel what you feel, you don't want to feel sadness and anger and frustration, anxiety, and have little mini panic attacks in the middle of wherever, right? If you don't want to feel those things, then stick with me. Right? Do some of the work, and we'll get you out of that place, and we'll get you out of there faster than if you were just walking around in the room on your own in the dark.
Fantastic. If you want to work with Pallas Athena, you can see her, learn more about how she works, and book a session at Talk to Pallas. That's PALLAS.com, talktopallas.com. You can also find her on Instagram at Talk to Pallas. And if you search her on YouTube, I believe it's Pallas Athena on YouTube.
Yep.
Check her out there. And yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people who need a little bit of that direction and that kick in the butt even sometimes that it sounds like you give them. So thank you so much for being here and sharing. If you're interested in learning how to get the absolute most out of your romantic relationships, then you're in luck, because I have put together a free workshop, or masterclass if you will, about 3 secrets that people in happy relationships have discovered. You can view the workshop at mrspirituality.com/3 secrets. Again, it's completely free. Just go there and watch it. It'll help you on your journey, give you some wisdom, some things to think about. The website again is mrspirituality.com/3 secrets. That's mrspirituality.com/3, the word secrets. It's all yours. Enjoy.